Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening. Estella stared intently at Roxan for a very long time before she finally agreed to let go of the woman, though reluctantly. Miss Jarvis, you must pinky swear with me that you will visit me in 2 days. Smiling, Roxan extended her hand and pinky swore with Estella. Lucian's face darkened as he saw how Roxan and Estella interacted with each other. After Roxan was done placating Estella, she stood up once again to leave. I should go now. With that, she fled the office without waiting for Lucian to respond. Not only was she worried that Lucian would ask about the reason she showed up at the kindergarten, but she was also terrified of hearing his sarcastic remarks. Lucian stared at Roxan as she left the office. He furrowed his brows. Daddy, are you angry with Miss Jarvis again? Estella asked anxiously as she observed the change in her father's expression. Estella's voice brought Lucian back to the present moment. He leaned over and caressed Estella's head. I'm not angry with Miss Jarvis, but I have something to attend to and have to go now. You be a good girl in school, okay? Estella held onto his sleeve. Daddy, are you going to pick me up tonight? Lucian stayed silent for a while. Realizing Estella must have been frightened from the earlier incident, he then nodded and agreed. Okay. Upon hearing Lucian's words, Estella finally loosened her grip on her father and followed him out of the office. Lucian handed Estella over to Pamela before turning to leave. After coming out from the kindergarten, Roxan slowed down her pace. Her mind was in a tumult. She had known that Lucian would marry Aubrey sooner or later. However, she never expected that he would let Aubrey take care of Estella this soon. Based on what Pamela said, it seems that Aubrey has a good relationship with her. Does this mean that Aubrey's attitude toward Essie has changed too? Perhaps Aubrey will be a great mother in the future. As Roxan approached her car, she reached for the door handle. Just as she extended her arm, someone behind her unexpectedly grabbed her by the wrist. Roxan immediately froze. She could recognize to whom this hand belonged even though the person standing behind her did not speak a word. It was none other than Lucian. Is he here to warn me? With that thought in mind, Roxan took a deep breath and summoned up the courage to turn around. Mr. Farwell, is there anything else you need? Lucian was in a rush when he left the kindergarten. With deep furrows in his brows, he scowled at Roxan. This was the first time Roxan had ever seen such an expression in his eyes. She felt nervous all of a sudden. I'm sorry, I broke my promise. Archie and Benny were worried that Essie would be bullied by the other kids. That's why I came to the kindergarten to check on her. It was all on their behalf. Roxan offered an explanation right away without waiting for Lucian to interrogate her. Just as Roxan was done speaking, Lucian tightened his grip on her wrist. Roxan grimaced with pain. Miss Jarvis, are you laying the blame on the 2 kids again? Lucian continued to question Roxan. And if it were the 2 of them who were worried about Essie, why didn't they come here themselves? Please don't use the excuse that they are only kids. They have been to my place on their own many times before this. Roxan was dumbfounded upon being grilled by Lucian. After a long time, she added abruptly, and I was very worried too. With a sullen expression on his face, Lucian probed, is that all? Roxan's heart skipped a beat when she heard the tone of Lucian's voice. She started to feel afraid of what he was going to say next. Since you are so worried about Essie, are you sure it's enough for you to just take a look at her? Lucian stared morosely at Roxan. Roxan shuddered in fright. That's enough. Lucian's dangerous tone of voice terrified her. Nonetheless, he wasn't about to let her off. Wouldn't becoming Essie's mother make you feel more at ease? Her chest felt tight, and she had difficulty breathing upon his words. This wasn't the first time Lucian had asked her that question, but her answer remained the same. This round was no different. She gritted her teeth and pulled away. You're overthinking things. I care for Essie because I feel bad for how much she relies on me. That's it. Lucian closed in. I wonder what Essie would think of this when she learns that you care for her only because you feel bad for her. Roxanne's heart fell when she heard him. She gritted her teeth and met his eyes. I do like Essie, but that doesn't mean I must become her mother. After all, I don't intend on taking advantage of you, and I believe you don't, too. Lucian's eyes darkened. How are you so sure that I don't? Her pupils constricted as her heart shook. Is he saying what I think he's saying? If that's so, how could he say something like that? Isn't he getting married to Aubrey soon? The words Lucian had spoken to her when he was courting her flashed through her mind, and she suddenly thought of a possibility. Up till now, Lucian was merely looking for a mother Estella would like. That would mean Aubrey might still be under consideration. Roxanne's eyes turned cold at that thought. Don't say something so misleading, Mr. Farwell. I already have Archie and Benny. I don't have the energy to care for one more child. I'm sure Miss Pearson will do a great job caring for Essie if you insist on finding a mother she would like, even if it is for your sake. Roxanne lowered her eyes and kept her emotions under control. I've said everything I need to say. If there's nothing else, I will take my leave. Lucian's eyes darkened. He reached out and grabbed her wrist with great force. Roxanne turned to look at him. She was about to speak up when an ear-piercing honk sounded. She turned toward the direction of the sound instinctively. A car rolled to a stop behind hers. The next thing she knew, Aubrey stormed out of the vehicle with a grim expression. Miss Pearson's here. Roxanne looked away as she reminded Lucian of Aubrey's arrival. Lucian frowned, turned around, and gave Aubrey a glance. Roxanne quickly pulled away. She got into her car nonchalantly and was about to leave when Aubrey called out to her. Miss Jarvis, it's been a long time. Don't you have anything to say to me? Roxanne could tell from Aubrey's tone that she was angry. Aubrey approached Lucian with an awkward smile and fixed Roxanne with a murderous stare. How dare she show up here? Aubrey was secretly glad she was on good terms with Pamela, as Pamela was the one who notified her the moment Lucian met up with Roxanne. A wave of fury crashed through Aubrey upon the thought of Lucian and Roxanne being together. Why does this woman keep showing up everywhere? However, she forced a smile as she couldn't express her disgust for Roxanne since Lucian was around. On the other hand, Roxanne never thought Aubrey would call out to her when she was about to leave. It would have been rude of her if she ignored Aubrey. With that thought in mind, Roxanne paused in her tracks, turned around, and greeted Aubrey coldly. It's been a while, Miss Pearson. Aubrey smiled. If I remember correctly, your kids don't study here. So what brings you here today, Miss Jarvis? Are you planning to transfer them to this kindergarten so they can attend school with Essie? Roxanne's heart sank at that. She could tell what Aubrey was hinting at even though she didn't say it straight to her face. Aubrey was accusing her of using Archie and Benny to approach Lucian by transferring her two kids to the same kindergarten as Estella. Roxanne denied her accusation without hesitation as soon as she realized what Aubrey was getting at. You're overthinking things, Miss Pearson. Archie and Benny are doing fine in school. I have no plans of transferring them over, nor do I have the time and effort to do so. Aubrey chuckled casually and started to put on an act. It's okay. Can help if you ever want to transfer your kids over. Essie likes being friends with Archie and Benny. It'll be good company for her. Roxanne's lips twitched. That won't be necessary. I only came to check on Essie. Essie is well taken care of. You have nothing to worry about, Miss Jarvis. Aubrey continued coldly. You have nothing to do with Essie. Moreover, you are Lucian's ex-wife. It will be in our best interest for you to keep your distance from Lucian and Essie as we are getting married soon. Lucian's and Roxanne's faces fell when Aubrey mentioned their divorce. Roxanne lowered her eyes and balled her hands into fists. She was reminded of how she had brought her 2 kids up alone in a foreign country after the divorce. At the moment, all her hardships in the past 6 years turned into hatred for Lucian and Aubrey. She wouldn't have landed in such a huge mess if not for the 2 of them. She couldn't understand why she would want to worry herself about some kid Lucian had with another woman now that she was back. A wave of sadness washed over her as she smiled bleakly upon that thought. Aubrey, standing by Lucian's side, was about to say something more to make her stand but was interrupted by Lucian. "Are you done?" Aubrey gulped as she was jolted back to her senses. Only then did she realize she was being too arrogant just now.
"I'm sorry, Lucian.
I was worried since Ms. Yaxley told me she saw a suspicious individual barge into the kindergarten and interact with Essie." She pushed the blame onto Pamela and Roxan brazenly. Then, she turned to Roxan and said kindly, "It's not that I'm stopping you from visiting Essie, I just hope that you can let me know beforehand in the future, so that I can give Ms. Yaxley a heads up." Roxan gave cold looks to the 2 people in front of her. When Aubrey met Roxan's eyes, a strange sensation struck her, and she subconsciously clamped her mouth shut. Lucian, on the other hand, scowled and looked at Roxan gloomily. A long while later, Roxan curled her lips self-deprecatingly. "Don't worry, Miss Pearson. I get your point. I'll stay away from Essie from now on, but I hope you'll be able to take good care of Essie and not let something like this happen again." Right after she made those utterances, she went into the car without giving them a chance to respond to her. Lucian drew his brows tightly together as he watched her leave. Though he wished she would not take off so unhesitatingly, he could not bring himself to say anything to make her stay when he thought about the look she had on her face earlier. Meanwhile, Aubrey did not expect Roxan to point out her fault in front of Lucian before leaving. Her countenance slowly stiffened as she watched Roxan's car disappear from her line of sight. Then, she carefully turned to look at the man beside her. Lucian. Lucian was upset, so he was visibly impatient when he spoke to her. "What else do you want to say? You were the one in charge of sending Essie to and from her school these days. Did her teacher not tell you anything about Essie's situation in school?" Overwhelmed with guilt, Aubrey lowered her gaze. "Ms. Yaxley did tell me that Essie seemed down recently, but I didn't put it to heart because I thought that was how Essie usually behaved. It never hit me that an incident like this would happen. Or if not for Roxan finding out about it in time, what do you think would have happened to Essie this time?" Lucian questioned coldly. Aubrey hastily tried to shrink from the blame. "Lucian, I really didn't know about these matters. You are well aware of Essie's condition. She's never quite excited. Moreover, something like that happened on her first day of kindergarten. When Ms. Yaxley told me about it, she only said that Essie wasn't enthusiastic in class, so I thought." In other words, she was blaming Pamela for not looking more into Estella's situation. That innuendo of hers did not go unnoticed by Lucian, whose expression darkened instantly. "When were you planning to tell me about this if I hadn't asked?" His sharp words had Aubrey stumped for words. After a moment of silence, she tentatively uttered, "I shouldn't have neglected this. I should have told you about it right away." Then, she quickly added, "Lucian, I really care about Essie. I was in a meeting earlier, but once I received Ms. Yaxley's message, I hurried over without wrapping up the meeting." Before she could finish her sentence, Lucian cut her off in annoyance. If Essie is disturbing you from your work at Pearson Group, I'd say it's best that I stop troubling you with Essie's matters from now on." Aubrey froze. Lucian was willing to continue with the engagement on one condition, and that was to get Estella to accept her. However, if he refused to let her get involved with Estella anymore, she would have no means to make the little girl accept her. In that case, her engagement with him would be broken off. "Lucian, please give me one more chance. I won't let something like this happen again," Aubrey pleaded, reaching out to grab Lucian's arm. However, he avoided her hands and uttered, "If this happens again, I'll announce to the public that the engagement between us has been called off." Aubrey's heart sank when those words entered her ears. Nevertheless, she soon realized that Lucian was actually giving her another chance. With that thought in mind, she let out a sigh of relief and nodded fervently. "I'll be picking Essie up this evening. Go back to your meeting," Lucian said to Aubrey in a frosty tone. The woman dared not say anything else. After all, it had been hard for her to get him to give her another chance, and she did not want to mess things up again. Only after watching Lucian leave did Aubrey plod back into her car. However, she did not drive toward Pearson Group. The meeting she mentioned earlier was only a lie to make Lucian think that Estella was important to her. The Pearsons had come to one tacit conclusion: Aubrey's most important task was to get Lucian to marry her as soon as possible. Hence, her father had been taking care of everything in Pearson Group, while she only went there once in a while. Most of her time was spent thinking of ways to get in Lucian's good graces. Just as her hard work was finally coming to fruition, Roxan's few sentences destroyed all the time and effort she had poured into the matter. Enraged, Aubrey wished she could skin Roxan alive. Alas, Lucian was present then, so she had no choice but to suppress her fury. It did not help that he had given her such a stern warning that only served to fan the flames of anger in her heart. "I have to teach that brat a lesson." Presuming that Roxan should be at the Research Institute at that moment, Aubrey headed straight for that place. Roxan was mentally and physically exhausted after leaving Estella's kindergarten. Initially, she planned to check on the little girl before returning to the Research Institute to continue her work. However, she no longer had any energy to spare. Roxan did not know whether it was because Aubrey's earlier words had upset her, but she found herself in a daze, unsure where to go. As such, she ended up driving aimlessly around the city until the sky darkened, and it was time to pick Archie and Benny up. Only then did she finally head toward their kindergarten. The moment she arrived, the boys were done with their classes. They were already rushing toward her in excitement before she could even get out of the car. At that sight, Roxan stayed in the car and unlocked the car doors for them. Once they got in, she took their bags from them. Seeing the expectant looks on the boys' faces made her heart sink. She knew they were that excited because they were aware that she went to visit Estella that day. They wanted to know how the little girl was doing. If Estella were doing well, she would not hesitate to tell them about it. Unfortunately, what she had seen was the scenario the boys dreaded the most. Roxan did not know how to break it to them. Mommy, how's Essie?" Benny asked when he heard nothing from her. She lowered her gaze as a wave of resignation washed over her. "Essie's doing okay. Her teacher takes very good care of her." That was the only thing Roxan could think of to say to them. Technically, it was not a lie. The teacher in Estella's class was sure to focus more on the little girl after that incident. Regardless of whether or not Estella would get on well with her classmates, she would never be bullied anymore. Finding their mother's response strange, the boys worriedly asked, "Yeah, then did Essie see you?" Roxan nodded stiffly. Then, Mommy, did you tell her that we miss her a lot too?" Benny queried in his adorable voice. Roxan kept her eyes focused on the road, not daring to meet the boys' innocent gazes. I did." Upon returning to their mansion, Roxan went to prepare dinner while the boys ran upstairs. "Archie, was Mommy lying to us just now?" Benny could not help but ask his older brother right after he closed the bedroom door. Archie frowned, his countenance utterly taut. "I sensed that there was something very weird about Mommy's tone and expression as well when she answered us just now. In fact, she even avoided our gazes on purpose. It's obvious that Mommy lied to us, but why? Could it be that Essie is having a tough time? Or could it be that Mommy didn't go to see Essie?" The boys could not stop thinking about those two possibilities. Should we visit Essie ourselves?" Benny anxiously put forth a suggestion when he did not get a response from his older brother after a long wait. Archie shook his head. "Yeah, let's ask Mommy first. There must be a reason she lied to us. Mommy has been acting very weirdly ever since we came home today. Could it be that she bumped into Daddy when she went to see Essie? At the thought of that possibility, he cast a glance at Benny and decided against voicing his speculation after a few seconds of hesitation. His younger brother was too impulsive in matters concerning Estella. Since he was worried about her as well, he was afraid that Benny would sway him should he divulge his conjecture. In their bedroom, Archie and Benny discussed ways to get their mother to tell them the truth. In the meantime, Aubrey, beside herself with fury, was driving toward Roxanne's house. Earlier in the afternoon, she had gone to the research institute. Not daring to raise a ruckus at that place lest she create more problems for herself, she opted to obtain Roxanne's whereabouts by asking around. By the time she managed to confirm that the latter was absent from the research institute, hours had passed. It was almost time for kindergarten students to finish their classes, so Aubrey rushed to the kindergarten, but she got there too late. At that point, she was extremely exasperated because she had missed Roxanne twice in a row. Aubrey sped to Roxanne's house, slammed her car door behind her, and strode to the entrance of the mansion. After pressing the doorbell twice, she soon heard footsteps within the house, followed closely by Roxanne's voice. Who is it?" Roxanne asked. She could not fathom why she would have visitors so late at night. Aubrey took a deep breath and shouted, "It's me. Open up." When Roxanne heard her voice, she halted in her tracks abruptly and replied indifferently, "I'm sorry, Miss Pearson, but I'm making dinner for my kids. I don't think I have the time to entertain you. Please go home." Considering how their encounter at the kindergarten entrance that day went badly, she was certain that the other woman had come to find fault with her. That was why Roxanne was not planning on opening the door for her guest. To think that you still remembered that you have 2 children. Standing on the other side of the door, Aubrey cursed, "Don't you dare forget the fact that you and Lucian are already divorced and that you gave birth to 2 children. How dare you pester Lucian? Do you have no shame? With your current circumstances, do you think the Farwells will accept you into their family? Stop dreaming." Roxanne did not expect such maniacal behavior from Aubrey. Her face darkened as she uttered, "I won't forget that. You may leave now." She did not want things to turn ugly since her children were upstairs. Much to her annoyance, however, Aubrey, seemingly provoked, continued hurling a tirade of abuse. In fact, her voice was getting louder. Are you finally scared of me now? Is that why you're asking me to leave? Well, too late. Who do you think you are? How dare you talk badly about me before Lucian, you batch?" Aubrey roared. Aubrey was getting out of line. Afraid that Archie and Benny could hear her, Roxanne decided to open the door and confront her. "Are you done, Miss Pearson? If you are, please leave," she uttered. When Aubrey saw that Roxanne had finally stepped out of the mansion, she became even more enraged. How dare you come out? What is it? Are you hoping for Lucian to come over to help you?" She snarled at the sight of the latter's face. Annoyed, Roxanne frowned. "As I've said before, I'll distance myself from them. I only went to the kindergarten today because I wanted to know how Essie was doing. If those kids didn't bully her, I wouldn't have met Mr. Farwell, and no one would have known I was there." Then, she enunciated a promise. "From now on, as long as Essie is well, I'll stay out of your lives." "You've got to be kidding me." Disdain was written all over Aubrey's face. "Do you think I would still believe your words? Where are those 2 children? Get them to come out. I want to show them their mother's true colors. They should know how you've seduced someone else's fiancé." Roxanne's expression turned grim when she heard her words. "Aubrey Pearson, get out of here if you're done making a scene, or else I'll call the police." Go on. I'd like to see if the police will side with me, Lucian's fiancé, or you, the homewrecker." Aubrey sneered. At that moment, Archie and Benny had just finished their discussion, and they could vaguely hear an argument going on downstairs. It sounded like someone called Mommy a homewrecker. Perplexed, the boys ran to the balcony and looked downward, only to find Aubrey standing in front of the entrance of their mansion. She was scolding their mother with sheer venom in her expression. Listen to me. You'll never get Lucian's attention no matter what you do. He didn't have feelings for you 6 years ago, and that hasn't changed since then. I'm the only woman who's worthy enough to be by his side." Aubrey fumed. Besides, there's no way the Farwell family would accept those 2 children of yours." It was as though she uttered that reminder because she was afraid Roxan had forgotten all about it. Hearing her repeatedly call Archie and Benny with such a derogatory term infuriated Roxan, who walked up to her with a frosty expression. What's the matter with you? Are you going to hit me?" Aubrey mocked. As soon as those words fell from her lips, a cute voice rang out from above. "You watch out, Mommy." In the next second, cold water poured down on Aubrey, drenching her from head to toe. The woman froze momentarily before she regained her senses a few moments later and looked up furiously. On the balcony, Benny stood on a stool and made a face at her. "There's no way Mr. Farwell would fall for an evil woman like you. You little brat. Get down here. I swear I'll teach you rascals a lesson." Aubrey yelled at Archie and Benny hysterically. However, the boys were not the least bit intimidated by her. "This is what you get for scolding our mommy, you evil woman." Overwhelmed with rage, Aubrey wanted to walk past Roxan to storm upstairs. Archie's and Benny's rash actions took Roxan by surprise as well. However, she could not deny that she was inexplicably exhilarated by it. Despite that, she was worried that Aubrey would try and harm the boys, considering how angry the latter looked. Therefore, she gave her a soft apology on behalf of her children. "Ms. Pearson, they didn't do it on purpose. They're just kids, so please forgive them." With that, Roxan looked up and shot a glance at Archie and Benny, signaling them to go along with her. "Pouring water on her to vent our anger is sufficient. We'll only end up on the losing end if we get into another trouble." However, Archie and Benny acted as though they did not notice her gaze. With arms akimbo, they uttered matter-of-factly, "We did it on purpose. Let's see if you still dare to scold Mommy." Aubrey wanted to dash into the house as if she had gone berserk. Since things had already gone to that extent, Roxan saw no point in backing down. Hence, she stood firm at the entrance and blocked Aubrey's way. "Why are you so mad, Miss Pearson? You were the one who came to our house today and made a violent outburst." Archie and Benny were just returning the favor. All of a sudden, Aubrey stood still. It must have been your doing. You must have taught them to do this," she roared in between pants. With that, she lifted her hand and swung it toward Roxan, who had been keeping her guard up. The latter swiftly raised her hand and jabbed a finger at an acupuncture point on Aubrey's arm. Aubrey instantly felt her arm going numb and weak. Before she could come to her senses, she received a tight slap across her face. Roxan did not hold back in that slap. The impact was so strong that Aubrey felt her mind going blank. It took her a long while to snap out of it. When she finally did, she stared at Roxan in disbelief. "You? How dare you hit me?" I just did what you were going to do to me," the latter answered with an icy expression. As soon as Roxan finished her sentence, she shoved Aubrey aside. Caught off guard, Aubrey staggered 2 steps backward and almost rolled down the stairs before the entrance. "This is a matter between us adults. Why did you have to involve my kids, Miss Pearson? That's rather disgraceful of you, don't you think?" Roxan paused and added expressionlessly, "Take that slap as a warning. If you dare to lay a finger on Archie and Benny, I'll make sure you regret your actions." As soon as Aubrey stabilized herself, she made a lunge at Roxan. Roxan lifted her leg slightly and kicked an acupuncture point on Aubrey's knee. Again, Aubrey ended up staggering backward in pain. "You're no match for me. If I want to make you suffer, I can do so easily." Roxan was merely stating facts. "Please don't forget about my expertise, Miss Pearson." As a traditional medicine practitioner famous for her prowess in acupuncture, She was extremely familiar with all the acupuncture points on the human body, as well as knowing how much pressure to exert on which acupuncture point in order to bring about the desired effects. Although the knowledge could save the lives of others, it could also be used as a form of self-defense. Aubrey flushed with rage from having suffered twice at the hands of Roxan, but she dared not retaliate recklessly. Why aren't you leaving yet?" Roxan snapped. Because of what she had done earlier, Aubrey shuddered unconsciously at her shout. Upon realizing her reaction, Aubrey blushed crimson with embarrassment. She then acted tough, yelling, "Just you wait." With that, she gritted her teeth and left. After getting into her car, however, she stared at the mansion from afar instead of driving off immediately. By then, Roxan had turned around and gone back into the mansion. Archie and Benny were still on the balcony, making faces at her in a smug manner. Their complacent behavior caused Aubrey's features to twist into a fearsome expression of fury. "Those two brat. They'd better pray that they won't ever fall into my hands. Otherwise, I swear I will make their lives a living hell." She stayed outside the mansion for quite a while before flooring the accelerator and driving away. In the mansion, Roxan suppressed her anger and continued preparing dinner. Once she was done, she hollered at Archie and Benny to get them to come downstairs for dinner. At that moment, the boys were already waiting at the landing. They had fun taking revenge on Aubrey earlier, but after watching her leave, they quickly realized that their action could very well upset Roxan. Hence, they had been waiting at the landing, expecting their mother to lecture them. "Come downstairs for dinner," Roxan called out to the boys after heaving a sigh inwardly. Archie and Benny came down the stairs obediently. As soon as they saw her, they admitted their mistake by saying, "Mommy, we're sorry." Before Roxan could utter a word in response, Benny added, however, "I don't think we did anything wrong. That evil woman scolded you. We wanted to protect you, Mommy." The sight of Aubrey berating their mother infuriated the brothers so much that they acted impulsively, grabbing a watering can nearby and pouring the water on the wicked woman's head. If Aubrey had dared to continue scolding Roxan, the boys would not hesitate to empty another can of water over her, even if their mother would be angry at them. Roxan's heart softened at Benny's words. However, her expression was still tense as she replied, "I know you two care about me, but stay out of it if something like this happens again in the future. Just let me handle it. Don't intervene." Benny retorted, "Mommy. You two might think that you are protecting me, but at the same time, you are putting yourselves in danger. What if Miss Pearson takes revenge on you two in the future? Don't you think I would be worried about that?" Roxan interrupted with a frown. Archie and Benny exchanged glances sheepishly before lowering their heads. We're sorry, Mommy. We were too impulsive." Although they had yet to find proof, they speculated that someone had paid the older children to beat them up. It isn't hard to figure out who the instruction came from. If that evil woman could do something like that, she could also take revenge on us. We didn't think things through. Only after Roxan saw that the boys had realized their mistake did she relax her tense expression. "Also, I would like to thank you for protecting me just now." With that, she bent over to hug them. However, don't act so rashly next time. Although you two want to protect me, I also want to protect you." Archie and Benny nodded obediently. Due to the disruption caused by Aubrey, they did not manage to ask about Estella. Nevertheless, they were dying to know the answers to the questions in their minds. After returning to their bedroom, they started discussing ways to ask Roxan about it in the future. Meanwhile, Roxan lay in her bed with conflicted feelings. "I merely wanted to check on Essie. Who would have thought that so many things would end up happening instead? Not only have I met Lucian, but I've also gotten into conflict with Aubrey." At that moment, Lucian's words and scenes of Estella getting bullied were playing on a loop in her mind. Upon realizing what was on her mind, Roxan bolted upright and shook her head violently. "Why am I still thinking about those things? I've already promised Aubrey I would stay away from them. While she was getting frustrated with herself, her phone that was on the table rang. Getting a grip on herself, Roxanne glanced down at her phone and saw Jack's name on the screen. It's already so late at night. What does Jack want from me again? She then picked up her phone in confusion. The second the call was connected, Jack's voice came through the receiver.
Milisegon Jarvis.
Am I interrupting your sleep? Roxanne sounded tired when she replied, no. I was just done getting ready for bed, but I hadn't laid down yet. What can I do for you, Mr. Damaris? Jack chuckled and said, oh, that's good then. From tomorrow onward, our research is entering the key stage. My grandpa wants me to support the research fully. Hence, I may be visiting the Research Institute more frequently starting tomorrow. I hope you won't find me a nuisance, Ms. Jarvis. Roxanne's spirits finally lifted at the mention of their research. We successfully completed the first stage of our research this morning, proving that the efforts we've put in all this time haven't been in vain. Starting tomorrow, we'll be embarking on a new and even more challenging stage. Just thinking about the results their research would bring filled her heart with anticipation. She also greatly welcomed Jack's assistance. If I'd be honored if you could come and help us, of course. Why would I find you a nuisance? He let out a low chuckle. That's good to know. It's late, so I shan't disturb you any further. See you tomorrow. Roxanne assented with a laugh. Thanks to Jack's phone call, she gradually felt calmer. Finally, she drifted into a peaceful sleep while thinking about the new research she would be doing the following day. Early the following morning, she sent Archie and Benny to the kindergarten, then hurried to the Research Institute. She thought she was early, but to her surprise, Jack was there before her. When she arrived, he and Colby were standing in the corridor, deep in conversation. Both of them looked very serious. Roxanne waited quietly at the side and did not interrupt. It took a long while before they wrapped up their discussion, and only then did she pipe up apologetically, I'm sorry I'm late. Jack flashed her an understanding smile. That's all right. I know you have to drop off the kids at kindergarten. In any case, we're not on a time crunch here. Your children are much more important. Since he had taken the words right out of Colby's mouth, the latter could only give a tight smile as he greeted Roxanne. A good morning, Dr. Jarvis. Then, the trio walked alongside each other toward the research facility while chatting about the project's progress. Suddenly, Jack turned to look at Colby and said, oh, right. I forgot to mention I'm officially participating in this research from today onward. I look forward to working with you, Dr. Galloway. Colby's expression stiffened for a fleeting moment when he heard those words. Just as Roxanne looked over, however, he quickly composed himself and smiled pleasantly. I'm sure our research will go on even more smoothly with your participation. After uttering that reply, he lowered his gaze, hiding his emotions behind the thin lenses of his glasses. Even before this, Jack has been coming to the Research Institute almost daily. He's practically glued to Roxanne. Now that he's so-called officially participating in the research, there's no saying how much closer they'll become. A wave of jealousy washed over him as the image of Roxanne and Jack being together all day appeared in his mind. Whether on purpose or not, Jack's lips quirked into an unfathomable smile after he dropped the bomb. It was not long before they entered the research facility. Roxanne formally introduced Jack to the other researchers, who welcomed him warmly, then led him to their laboratory bench. Initially, they only carried out pre-testing in small batches. Hence, the bench prepared by her was not that large. There was just enough space for 2 people to work together. Previously, Colby and Roxanne were the ones working on the pre-tests together. With the addition of Jack, however, Colby had no choice but to relinquish his spot and play second fiddle. After preheating the apparatus, Roxanne prepared to add the materials. When she turned around, the materials that had been weighed out were already passed to her. She was momentarily surprised. Then,
She lifted her gaze and looked at Jack with a smile before accepting the materials and continuing with the experiment. Perhaps because the pair had worked together to some extent during that previous period, she found they had good teamwork. If she had to compare it to collaborating with Colby, she did not find it much different.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.